Welcome to Making It with Terry Wollman, the show that explores the secrets, successes, and strategies for making it in the music biz. And now, here's your host, Terry Wollman.
Welcome to Making It. I'm Terry Wollman, and this show is about creating a successful life and what that means to my guest today, artist, manager, and music executive, Emily Cameron. I'd like to share my intention that inspires this podcast. Time passes quickly, and I've learned that we should do what's in our hearts and do it well without apologies or excuses. I encourage you to create your life and art in your own unique way and express your artistry with joy and abandon. Be willing to work uncompromisingly for what you believe in. Success will have a better chance of finding you when you live your life with integrity, focus, and passion. Be selfish with your discipline and selfless in your performance, and don't forget to have fun along the way. My guest today is Emily Cameron. Music executive Emily Cameron is a partner at the global management company ATC Management. With a background as a pianist, violinist, and theater student, Emily's path has taken her across virtually every area of the industry. Her career began at the age of 18 working in the A&R department at Sony Music Publishing in the UK. Since then, she has touched nearly every area of the industry, managing producers, writers, and mixers, while also delving into publishing consulting roles. In 2019, Emily established her own management company, MKam Arts, and later partnered with Plush Management before becoming a partner at ATC Management. Her track record includes chart-topping successes like David Guetta, Galantis, and Little Mix's Heartbreak Anthem, as well as her contributions to Black Eyed Peas' acclaimed #1 album, Translation. Other recent highlights include signing her client Fashion XN to Disney, and helping place artist Dakota on the Jonas Blue track Fast Car, which is one of the few songs to achieve over 1 billion streams. Most importantly, Emily's journey has made her a fierce advocate for artist rights. She is outspoken about the ways that creatives have been disenfranchised over the last few years, speaking out on a variety of panels about the need for fair compensation. My guest today is an exceptional music executive worth listening to. Emily Cameron, welcome to Making It.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the lovely introduction. It's easy to forget a lot of stuff that you do, I think, in music because we're always on the go.
Right.
It's funny to have it recapped. Thank
Yeah,
you.
it is. It's always, I have the same experience when I'm on the other end of the mic and I'm being interviewed and people start rattling off years of credits. And, I remember most of those accomplishments, but it is kind of, and not just to me, but all of my guests, and so many iconic artists or up and coming artists, it's the same experience. It's like, wow, who's that person? Some people
Yeah.
have said, today that person is you. And I'm so happy to be talking with you because you are kind of everything the show is about. You're a creative. You grew up as an artist, wanting to be an artist. But you were also always curious about business, I don't know about always, but you became curious about business and embraced it instead of resisted it. And I want to talk about that. And I also I just want to read, I guess, what is kind of your mission statement. I believe I found it on your bio or whatever was sent to me. But I think it, to me, it reads as a mission statement. Emily Cameron continues to leave an indelible mark on the music world using her visionary leadership and unparalleled passion for music to uplift and empower the artists and creators she represents. With an unwavering commitment to supporting emerging talent and fostering artistic excellence, Emily's journey is an inspiring testament to the transformative power of music in shaping lives and touching hearts worldwide. That's a pretty beautiful intention. And as something to go through life as, not just as a person, but in business.
Right. I think it's always important to be well-intentioned in anything you do. I think that, we're in an industry, entertainment is an industry that you're constantly going to be coming up against difficulties, difficult characters, bad business practices. And I think oftentimes it's all too easy, for us to take the easy route and kind of, it's hard industry to make money in as well. And so sometimes opportunities can be presented to you that might seem, you know, really appealing at the time, and you might be in a really desperate situation. But at the same time, I think that in the long term, being on the good side, you always win, and I think that there are countless stories of, A&Rs or executives or whoever that have kind of done it the wrong way and gone for the fast cash grabs. And ultimately it's a creative industry, and it's got a heart and soul as well, so I think it's
It's
important
founded in
to.
heart and soul. I mean,
Yeah.
that is the foundation of the craft,
Yeah.
the creative arts, and and having people like you as guides in the business and as um, mentors and protectors, advisors is so important. And I'm curious, you're such a fierce advocate for artists' rights. Why is that so important to you personally?
I think from working in publishing very early on, one of the reasons I got into management was because I would meet all of these writers, producers, and creatives who were kind of coming into the room, or the building rather. And they were just really desperately unhappy, a lot of them. And, I'd be, when I was interning, I'd be making the tea and having all these really interesting conversations with them. And, despite the fact that I'd been a musician growing up, going to theatre school, they don't teach you anything about, the music business. I mean, I knew how to put on a show and work with a band and, work in theatre or, play something on the piano or on the violin. But, I had no idea what music publishing was, how producers worked, that you could manage producers, how a record was built. And, I think that is, to me, the root of a lot of the issues that we have in the music business, because people aren't taught these things. And so, you kind of just blindly go into it a lot of the times as a creative, with good intention, assuming that everyone else has good intentions. But, it's also an industry that I think tech has moved way ahead of the actual business side.
Hmm.
And so I think, that has allowed a lot of gray areas to be created where, things aren't transparent on the business side. So, for me, it's very important, to do business the right way. And, people should be compensated for their work. I mean, I think it's interesting. It's the only industry in the entire world, where, well, I'm sure there's other cases, obviously, but yeah, I mean, where most other jobs, you do your work, you get paid your salary and paid for your time, and you go and finish a job, and that's it. But it doesn't work like that in the music world.
Right.
And it's kind of something that, I think a lot of people are bullied into. And I think that, change comes with speaking out about it and educating people on it, because the more people that know about it, the more people that ask questions, and it creates, a knock-on effect. So that's something that I try, continue to strive for anyone that I work with, and other creatives too, because
Hmm.
we need more manpower, frankly.
Right. Absolutely. And speaking to what you just said, I remember, I mean, my perspective, and I'm curious yours as well. It seemed like that technology moving faster than the compensation or the rule uh, adjustments uh, started happening when cable TV came out, and
Mm,
that was my first awareness of it. Certainly when streaming happened, that was a whole game
mm,
changer. Also, when people quit paying for recorded music. But I remember, like, back in the days when I used to do more on camera acting on music videos and things like that. Sidelining for film and TV and things like that.
mm.
But the scales weren't quite the same as what they were. You could end up, for regular TV and film work, they were still catching up back then. I'm curious how you walk that fine line between the advice that I've heard from so many of my guests over the last 7 years, where many of them say, don't just make your decisions based on money. If it's something that is artistically, creatively, personally important to you, be open to it. And I certainly have had some good situations that didn't start off business wise everything they should be, but I turn them
Mm,
into everything they could be, by saying yes. You know, you show up and you do more and you do great, and then it becomes then the adjustments are made financially with good
mm.
representation. But where do you live with that? Uh, do you guide your clients to just have hard rule just because, like you said, when you're in another business, your rate is your rate.
Mm,
You get so much an hour, you get so much a day, so much a week. That's your rate, and there's no negotiating. It's not a gray area, and
mhm.
it seems like in our business, every time you start as songwriters, producers, arrangers, performers, the budgets are different. You have to come
Mhm.
to decision making. What's your thoughts on that?
I mean, it's kind of really it's something that is I have to navigate every single
You
day.
do as well. Okay. Mm.
And it's every situation is kind of different. I mean, every single artist has a different recording budget. So, it's hard to, really, and I was just having this conversation with some producers earlier. I mean, you've got to get a balance, I think, of, working on certain things with bigger companies, like a Warner Music or a Universal Music or a
Right.
Sony who have bigger budgets, and getting those kind of set rates, and that kind of high fee, high master point situation, whilst also balancing it out with long-term stuff.
Mhm.
You might be working with an artist but who doesn't have the biggest budget right now, but perhaps by investing some time into that artist, they might become the next Ed Sheeran or the next Dua Lipa.
Right.
And then, you're really set because you're the go-to person because you invested at the right time. So it definitely requires a certain amount of risk taking.
Mhm.
And I think also because, unfortunately, you do have to work with people on budgets and things like that. And there's always creative ways to do it. I mean, I would always say, okay, so, maybe you haven't got this fee, so we could take, more of the master points or take more publishing. And that there's always ways that it can be worked out, that's fair to everyone, obviously. I think a lot of the time it's just asking the question.
Yeah. It's so interesting to hear you say that because basically you are being creative, in the business side of it, as creative as the actual making of the product.
Mm,
You are composing it as you go
yeah,
and performing it as you go.
free, freestyling it,
Freestyle.
basically.
Right, you're improvising, but, based on years of, business knowledge, having great mentors, partners, and really just diving in. I mean, your background is, I think, is fantastic because first of all, I love that you started as an artist,
Yeah.
and then that you very immediately at 18 started learning about publishing, like really learning how it works,
Mm,
and then moving that into management. Seems like it's a really well balanced and ideal skill set. Do you
yeah.
miss playing music? Is there any kind of struggle with you, or do you still play and sing for fun?
I think that I mean, I have a keyboard, I can still read music.
Hmm.
I regret not keeping up my playing
Right.
more. I
Hmm.
think once I started working in the music business, but it was also, because I was also being creatively fulfilled by doing my job in a different way that I'd never done it. It wasn't that I was like, I hate performing and playing and I never want to do it again. It was just
Right.
that I was very curious about this other side to the industry. And I also think if you want to be the best at anything, if you want to be good at the business, you have to learn the creative. And if you want to be good at the creative and achieve success in the creative, you have to learn about the business because otherwise you're only ever going to get so far. And you kind of leave yourself vulnerable to being taken advantage of.
Right.
Um, so yeah, I mean, I think I definitely miss it. But I also um feel very creatively stimulated by what I do. And I think, there was an element also of wanting to not be that person who I wanted to always feel for any creator that I work with that I'm a safe space and I'm not someone who's trying to muscle in on anything they're doing as well. So, perhaps I've been maybe hyper conscious of that actually, almost too much so. But yeah, I mean, I also get, I mean, right now I'm in a studio in the middle of Las Vegas, you know what I mean? So I definitely still get to be part of the process, which is fun. So,
Very much so, and just the fact that you hopped on a plane, I imagine, to flying up for the
mhm.
day, to work with one of your artists, and then you're
Yeah,
getting on a plane as soon as this interview is over, is indicative of you still living a creative, a very creative life,
yeah.
being spontaneous, but also handling your business. I don't think that's to your disadvantage. I actually find it refreshing and really appealing. With because I've spoken over the years and have worked with business people, and
Mm.
I don't know. I think that your background allows you to bring an extra understanding and depth to what you do.
That's something that is important to me and always, I guess, kind of surprises me with a lot of executives is I think a lot of, I mean, a lot of more so, I think, out in the States, but there's a lot of executives that were creatives. And I do think that you need to be able to empathize
Yeah,
on a certain level, and I think that, it's an industry where, it's really hard.
yeah,
You go through a lot of really, really tough stuff, so it's important to have people that kind of can feel that and, hopefully, and then it doesn't unfortunately, it often goes the other way, but, hopefully, those people are able to empathize enough where they care enough to make a difference from an executive level, because that's what we really need.
and so also just on a personal note, how does kickboxing and sport training play into the balance of all of this for you?
It's my therapy. I think that we all need I mean, music is therapy to me, but it's also my job.
Yeah,
And I think that we all need something that is, ours. And we need something that is a release, and you're dealing with a lot of people who are, just very yeah, I think a lot of people who are very high stress,
yeah,
and very intense. And, as a manager, I'm definitely an empath. I take on a lot of, when people that I work with hurt, I feel it. When they're done wrong, I feel it. Um, so it's interesting because, yeah, I mean, I think as much as I love my job, it also definitely requires, taking some downtime and also just mentally focusing. It's very easy to get caught up in a certain lifestyle rather, I think, when you're in the music business. And I don't say that with judgment. I think everyone should have fun and live their life. But I also think that when you're in it long term, and it's been 10 years for me now, you also need to find practices that keep you focused, and give you a routine.
and for you, part of that practice is physical training.
Yes.
What else? Do you meditate, walks, hang out with family, friends, cook?
Um, Walking, being outside, I
Mhm.
think so much of our business has moved on to a screen
Yeah.
now.
Mhm.
So just being outside, getting out, I think doing different things. Meditating, I find it very hard to sit still, but I guess I meditate when I do. Yeah, I mean, I do yoga and that's helped a lot.
Yeah.
So I do
Mhm.
kind of meditation and yoga, and, I set intentions and, and I still write. So yeah, I think also carving out time for your own life is very important. I mean, it's funny, I have friends who've literally said, I had a baby because I literally was just like, I have to have something that is more important than this because it can become so all consuming.
Most people would get
And
a
I
pet,
yeah,
a
I
puppy.
know. Well, a lot of us have dogs too.
Sure.
But yeah, no, yeah, I know. It's interesting. I think
Yeah.
you do need to carve out family time, and also just to have that kind of support. And, as I said before, and as you know, it's an industry that people can definitely get caught up in stuff. So it's good to have people that ground you as
Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
because, I've seen it all too many times where someone comes out, especially to Los Angeles, and they're kind of young and starry-eyed, as we all are when we first get to Los Angeles. And I definitely was, but, it also can if you go from zero to hero, and obviously there's people that you can get very quick successes and suddenly be catapulted into a completely different position. And if you don't have people around you kind of grounding you, then it's easy to it's a harsh fall if you don't, treat people correctly and
Yeah.
keep yourself grounded, that's for
I
sure.
I feel grateful for the slow, steady climb, and
Yeah.
not just getting, by the time I started working on camera and television and various things that I've done, or, I had time to acclimate along the way.
Mm.
And, I can't even imagine, being a young artist getting thrust to the front of the line and not knowing what to do with all of that attention
Yeah.
and money and everything. I can see where it's an easy fall down. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, what did you had this remarkable opportunity when you worked with Guy Moot at Sony Music Publishing, and I'm wondering, how did those 2 years or so that you worked there inform your career choices, and also what are some of the most valuable lessons that you learned when you worked at Sony Music that informed your career?
I mean, one thing that I really learned from Guy was discipline. I mean, he's someone that I really kind of admired.
Mhm,
In that way, he just kind of, it's also very into martial arts,
mhm,
and he had a family life, but he had a routine, and he was also just kind of very consistent. I mean, he was quick on things, he didn't skip stuff. To this day, if I sent him an email, he replies the same day. I mean, I think some of the busiest people that I know are the quickest people to reply. And obviously there's that famous saying, if you want to get something done, ask a busy person. And I think, that definitely manifests itself in Guy. And I learned that you can have a balance in terms of having a family and doing things the right way, and also just really he's obviously consistently worked with an incredible roster of people, and I think that you know everyone has a different career path, and it's not to say that it's a bad thing if you go from thing to thing to thing, because it's how a lot of us learn and end up where we end up. But at the same time, I do think it's really admirable to be consistently fighting and working with the same people for such a long period of your career. So
mhm.
yeah.
I've found martial arts to be a big help in my balance as well. I
Mm,
started training when I was 40 after a bicycle accident, and
mm,
in karate and jujitsu, and ended up getting a black belt, and just, but I got so much more out of it than I expected. Like
mm,
because it's the first thing that I did as an adult that required a lot of time and dedication and commitment, and discipline, which I already had in spades, and you did as well as growing up
mm,
as a musician. But the thing is, it just made me a better musician. The more, taking time away from practicing an instrument to go learn a kata, I
mm.
was conflicted with that. I struggled with the balance of time and everything. But then it made me a better musician, and it made
Yeah.
me a better person. It learning to fight calmed me down
Yeah.
too.
Yeah, I think that's the irony with martial arts, is that
Mhm.
it's actually really not violent.
No, you learn to not
Yeah,
fight is really, or how to end a
yeah,
fight.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, I mean, I think that it's also just kind of something to channel your energy and your focus into,
Completely.
and I think there's a lot to be said with that and songwriting as
Yes.
well,
How do you
and
mean?
kind of how I think that with martial arts, like, with boxing, for example, whenever I do boxing, I have to use my brain so much because you have to be super alert. So you have to be enjoying it whilst also controlling your breath, but also being calm, because you need to breathe properly, and you need to also be really focused because you need to watch what's going on. You need to listen. You need to listen to what's being, yelled at you, and you need to react really quickly as well.
Mhm.
And those are all really important skills to have in the music business. You need
Yeah.
to be able to react quickly when you're put in situations or put on the spot, or someone asks you something. You need to be able to listen to other people. and use your ears. You need to be able to have focus, and you also need to be able to kind of like not scatter your focus as well, which has been something that, I mean, honestly, is still a learning curve for me. It's how do you spend your time? Because I think it's all too easy to do a huge amount of work without having really achieved or done anything.
Mhm.
And I know that's something that I've spoken to a lot of other A&R friends about, or manager friends, and they've kind of said they completely agree. It's, anyone can run around town and do a good meeting, and set up a good session, but I think that the follow through and the consistency needs to
Right.
be there.
It's reminding me. It's so great to hear you say that. It's really interesting
Mm.
to me, and I can connect with everything that you just described because it was very clear. But one of the things that we practice, they would basically say to have a soft eye. So you want to just not just laser like look at somebody's face or their feet or their fist or but like just sort of gaze, broaden your gaze. Don't laser focus on
Mm.
looking at one thing. Look at everything, by relaxing and breathing and everything. So it allows you to see, when somebody's getting ready to hit you, you can just sort of feel that their foot shifts, their balance shifts, or you see other things because you're not just trying to like look at their hands. And
Mm.
and it seems like a great metaphor for life and songwriting and producing and all of the things that you're saying. I want to ask you about your experience and have you share your perspective of being a female in the industry and how differently you have to navigate the music business yourself and also your women clients too.
Mm.
Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely different. I think that I remember asking a female executive when I was at Sony, as an intern, um, what's the biggest challenge, and what do you think is the number one thing that you face as a challenge as an executive, and where do you see that, and how do you see it play out? Um, and it wasn't kind of until a few years down the line that I really understood or had a coming to moment of what she was talking about. But she said to me, she said, "You won't notice it when you're at entry level." She said, as long as you're an assistant or someone's PA or, doing admin, um, you know, you really you won't notice it. But she said the second that you try and you're advancing your career and you've been in the industry a few years, and you're going for those bigger positions,
Mhm.
and those bigger jobs and whatever it might be, um, that's when you'll see it. Um, and it's 100% true. It's
And is it
100% true. I mean,
subtle or just blatantly obvious or both?
both.
Mhm.
Both. It's both. It's subtle in some ways, in that the way that it'll be done, it might be polite, it might be slightly patronizing, and oh, you're so cute, and oh, you're kind of the token female, type situation. But it can also be really obvious.
Mhm.
I think especially in America, I think it can be also very aggressive.
Mhm. More so than
I mean,
Britain
I think
or Europe?
I think in Britain it's still very present, and in Europe it's still very present, but it's more subtle. I think people are a bit softer with how it's approached, but it's also there's a lot. It's also harder in a way because there's less opportunity. I think in America there's a lot more opportunity. So there's obviously, more positions available, there's more genres, um, different types of roles, bigger companies, everything. But I think at the same time, it's also women are also made to feel that they need to compete with each other and that they need to be nasty to each other
With each
in
other,
order to kind
right.
of,
Mm,
yeah, so that's part of the problem too.
yeah.
And I think that people think that I know a lot of people who just think like doing a shout out for someone on Instagram or doing a post or this or that is kind of supporting women once a year or whatever it is that
Oh,
the
yeah.
Women's Day is. But, it's not about that. I think it's about, you know, if you know a young female A&R, help her get a great session. If you know a young female manager, introduce her to, the same people that you would be introducing to, other young male kind of people that you're mentoring. And I've been really lucky to have people that have done that for me, like Guy, Zach Katz, who ran BMG and managed Jason Derulo and is over at FaZe Clan now, has been an incredible support to me and really helped me and introduced me to a lot of different writers and producers and executives. So yeah, I mean, I think you've got to kind of definitely find people. I think the key as a female, I think, is finding people to help kind of mentor you and bring you through that system because it protects you. And if you go in, I think solo, one of the reasons I partnered with ATC Management was because I felt that it was a company that would really protect me and really fight with me, alongside obviously having a great business.
Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, I hadn't really thought about um, the aspect of the competitiveness or the fear of helping fellow women, instead of stepping over
Mm,
each other to keep your head above water, to not
hmm
drown yourself. But yeah, I have my philosophy in general is that we're all in this together, and
mm,
or those are the kind of people that I want to surround myself with as often as possible. We don't always get to, certainly when we're
yep.
working on big projects, and um, but generally, I'm not going to let anybody take that away from me. The idea, the intention, in a way that you started this conversation with as well, that just bringing integrity into what you do, and that it doesn't. I mean, not don't put yourself in a place where you can be taken advantage of, or let people. Don't be a doormat. But on the other hand, why not help somebody along the way as
hmm
you're still receiving help from other people? We just continue to pass the
Yep, and
the
it's
joy,
easy
the
to do.
appreciation.
It's easy to
Right,
do. It's just one email sometimes,
right, hmm,
one introduction. It's
right.
super easy, but it's small things that build up over a long time.
I'm curious about a, a couple of projects that you've worked on, and one is I just recently was listening to Fast Car, the new
Hmm
version uh, that you placed Dakota on, and which has gotten over 1 billion streams, which is pretty fantastic. By the way, are
hmm
they making money? Are they monetizing on 1 billion streams?
So I mean, full transparency, I didn't place her on Fast
Okay.
Car. I actually met Dakota afterwards. She was still I kind of knew of her, but wasn't managing her at that point.
Mhm.
But I mean, obviously anything that is a sample or a remake, especially of a song, as big as Tracy Chapman's Fast Car, no one's going to make any money on the publishing.
Right. Got
So,
Tracy.
yeah,
Did Tracy own the publishing on that? I don't remember.
yes,
Good.
yeah. And her publisher, of course. So yeah, I mean, in terms of that side of things, if you get 1 billion streams and you have an original record, it's obviously very different. But at the same time, I mean, I think so. I was discussing this with someone the other day. So 1 billion streams is equal to a total of 3 million US dollars. And that's for every single person involved. That's for every single writer, every single producer, the engineer, the record label, everyone.
Performance
Um,
royalties, everything.
exactly.
Right.
So in 1 billion streams total is $3 million, which is not actually a huge amount because if you think about, obviously 10, 20 years ago, if someone bought 1 billion copies of your CD, you never have to work again.
Good to go. Right. Yeah.
But when you have 3 million that's meant to be split between the record label, the, DSPs, the creators, the artists, I mean, and that's on 1 billion. And
Right.
there's Spotify, I think, have the playlist that's called the Billions Club of all the songs that have made the billions. And it's not a particularly long list, you know. So that I think that kind of should give you some kind of indication on what people are really earning on these things. But
Yeah.
also, I mean, it's the irony is if you get over 1 billion streams on Spotify, you still have to buy your own plaque. So you still have to pay $4,000 that you probably haven't even seen from the song
Right.
to pay for your own plaque. So
Yeah.
it's an interesting one, but I mean it's also I think any record at the same time that you work on or an artist works on that does incredibly well can just put you in a completely different position career-wise, so whether it's the exposure and just people knowing your vocal and I think being able to have those moments, like I know for Dakota was incredible to be able to go and perform around the world. And that's the power of music, and that's ultimately why we all keep doing it, because of the reaction and the way it makes us feel and the way it makes other people feel.
Well, that's why I know who she is, because she sang on
Mm,
that song. And now I
yeah.
know more about her because, of course, I went to see what else she's done. Once
Hmm.
I heard that, the new recording. What's your business perspective, personally for streaming? Do you encourage your artist to stream everywhere? Just check off every box when you release something, so it can be in China where there's never been a real strong copyright respect, or just let it go out there and let it do everything, or do you do it within limits, or I mean, you're expressing the pros and
I mean,
cons,
so,
but
so,
yeah.
so far, I mean, I think when something is, whenever we put anything out, it's always worldwide. I mean, I think that you don't ever want to limit a song and its capabilities just because you never know where it could go.
Right.
Which is a scary thing, but also a really beautiful thing.
Mhm.
And I guess that's the scariest part of releasing a record, is of course, as much as we do it because we love it, we also all want success, and we're human, we put stuff out and we want people to like it, especially if it came from our own personal experiences. So yeah, I mean I think you've got to, I think also you can't kind of limit. It's unfortunate, I think, that in different countries, and it's also very frustrating that there's so many different practices and so many different ways that people stream, because in different countries. Like I have a friend who is a Nigerian artist, and she was telling me that they all stream in a completely different way than we do in the US. And so, you have these artists in different countries that are actually doing really well and picking up huge audiences.
Mhm.
But because it's not across the same platform that they might be using in America or in somewhere in Europe, then it's just, it's not getting picked up. So it's also interesting because it really is kind of like a game, where you have to learn all these tricks. And I think a lot of stuff is missed because there's no there's no one size. I mean, there isn't a one size fits all approach for everyone, of course, but there's also no consistency between any country. And I mean, I think like a lot of countries still their main streaming service is YouTube. So it's yeah, but obviously they all pay different rates too.
Right.
So one stream on Spotify is what, it's like 0.003 cents or something. And
Yeah.
like, I mean, yeah, don't quote me exactly on that, but yeah, I mean, it's different, but you'd also get higher on Tidal, and then you get a different rate on Apple Music and different on, Pandora. I mean, it's all completely different. So it's kind of just, makes it very hard. It makes it very easy for them to pull the wool over our eyes,
Mhm.
basically.
How do you recommend that artists uh, stay current with the ever-changing uh, collection agencies and ways to monetize music? In other words, a lot of people didn't know they needed to register with Sound Exchange until
Hmm.
the word got out. And then MLC just sort of slipped under the radar, for a while. Like, I've spoken to a lot of artists who still don't, these are like known artists, but they don't know about registering their music with MLC. You know,
Mm.
it seems like so how do people stay current business wise besides having great representation, which not everybody has the opportunity to get?
I mean, there's so many different ways, and things that you have to do nowadays. I mean, it's getting on, platforms like Twitch. They were kind of running a big producer platform for a while. It's also, working with non-profit organizations such as ASCAP or BMI and
Mhm.
rights collection societies, working with music publishers, getting an advance. I mean, it's also about kind of leveraging your position and working with a team that understands how to basically kind of build up different income sources.
Mhm.
Maybe it's doing a partnership with, a guitar company or working with an audio company,
Right.
or,
Mhm.
bringing, if it's an artist, doing, product placement and working with different companies on, featuring stuff in videos to bring money in if you're independent. I mean, I think it's kind of, you really, one thing that I definitely have learned more about and got much more into, especially since moving to America and especially since working more on artists as well as just writers and producers, is, we're in a time, I think, that you've got to get creative because streaming isn't paying the bills.
Mhm.
So maybe you have to go out on tour for a bit and, do a few shows, or maybe, you have to take on an extra job, or maybe you have to work with an artist that you're not super excited about, but they have a really good budget. It's yeah, I mean, it's still ultimately it's still a job.
Right.
So yeah.
Th- There's a word that you use, I've heard you use in other interviews, holistically. And,
Mm.
I read something saying that always be eager to explore new opportunities and further diversify your portfolio. You made the decision to focus exclusively on artist management and sought out a partnership that can provide the necessary resources and knowledge to support your clients holistically. And that's such a great word. It's not often heard in the music business, but
Mm.
it seems like that's just what you were describing, looking at like martial arts, looking at everything, looking at the big picture, being present, taking it in, being open-minded, I suppose, open-hearted,
Mhm.
um, not rigid in your thinking. Like you said, be willing to consider working with a client that you might not have thought of. Some of my best career opportunities came from me being open to something that was unexpected, not even something I was really that interested in.
Mm.
Sometimes occasionally walking through not the front door, but the side door.
Yeah.
Uh, and then other things happen because I went in and gave it 100%. Do you, it sounds like you do. You encourage your artists to always be open to
Yeah.
consider things like that.
You have to. I mean, it's too unfortunately, the business just doesn't make sense, and I wish that it was. We're just not in a time anymore where, traditionally as an artist, your job and a manager, your job is to, deliver the music, is to create, a project or projects or a song, singles, or EP, whatever that might be, and deliver it to a label. And the label's job is to kind of, or the A&R's job is to listen to it and go, you've brought us something really incredible, and we are gonna market this. We're gonna, put money and get it to radio and put a plan together and, all these things. That is just not happening anymore.
Mm.
I mean, it's no one wants to sign anything unless it's already broken. Everyone's too scared to get fired. People just want to look at data, and not actually listen to things. And, unfortunately, you kind of have to break yourself or break your own artist before you go to a major label now. Which is, it's a great shame, but it's the way that
Mhm.
the industry is moving. So, but I think there's also a lot of power in that. As long as you know that, I think it kind of teaches you, you've got to hustle,
Right.
you have to do a different kind of hustle. And also, I think that, there's a lot of amazing experiences that come out of that too. It's all part of the journey at the end of the day, and ultimately, I think we're all just figuring it out.
How would you define your job as a manager? And what's a typical day like? I imagine today's a really good example of a typical
Mm.
day for you.
Yeah. um, every day is different.
Mhm.
You kind of always have to be prepared to be on call and prepared to be ready to just be like, right, I need to run and leave this and do that and handle this. I mean, I think, yeah, and you've got to just, you can't get too stuck in a routine.
Mhm.
As much as I say it's important to do that, I mean, I knew it was super important for me to come out to Vegas to, do a few meetings and see the studio and a couple of other things. And so I was like, right, well, it is what it is. It's 24 hours of my life and, off you go.
Mhm.
I think that, yeah, I think as a manager, you're wearing a lot of hats, I think you are kind of also the A&R, you're the song plugger, but you're sometimes the therapist, I mean, there's definitely an emotional part of it too that's
Yeah.
really important. I
Yeah.
mean, it's important to look after artists' mental health as well, because, uh, they go through a lot.
Yeah. Well, if not you, who would? I mean, you're at the
Mhm.
front line. You know what's needed, and
Yeah.
you have the compassion and the understanding to step in. Do you are on your daily decisions, do you have a team that you work with? Like, do you just hop on a plane, or do you talk to your partners and say, you know, what do you think? Should I get on the plane, or I'm going to get on the plane? Can you handle this today? How does all of that work? Because I know you have a team.
Yeah, I mean, every situation is different, but
Okay.
definitely, you know, I love to have partners to bounce ideas off, and I think when
Yeah.
also people have more experience than you
Hmm.
in certain areas, I think it's also um really important to kind of respect that and listen to that and take advice, because it's, none of us really know what we're doing. So, I definitely run everything by them as a team because I think, at the very least, it's good to have other opinions on stuff, just so you can weigh up things before you make a decision. But it's definitely a team effort. I mean, I think you also have to work with people, especially being a woman, that like empower you and trust you and,
Hmm.
so yeah.
That's so interesting to hear you say none of us really know what we're doing, but I get it. Just most people
Mm,
don't say the obvious. And
yeah.
that's not just you and the artist, but the people who we're speaking to who are the gatekeepers or the door openers, they don't know either. It seems like, but maybe, it kind of seems also as you get older in life, you kind of look at, your parents in a different way and you go, they were making it up as they went along. We
Yeah.
thought they knew. You'd ask them something and say, "Absolutely not," or "Yes, you can." And later on, you find out from your own experience or speaking to them that, they'll just say, "We didn't know. We just were doing the best we could."
Yeah.
I spoke to a friend uh, last night. Actually, it was at a music industry event. Grammys are coming up. Some people are gathering
Hmm.
and supporting each other, and it was somebody I've known a long time. And her daughter is 20 now, but she was saying, when she was 4, we didn't know. All we knew was how to bring up a 3-year-old. And then she turned 5, and we
Yeah.
only knew how to bring up a 4-year-old. And we're still making it up as we go along. So it's exactly that. I have one question, and then I'll get to our closing questions. Uh, and it's just more of a personal question. But where do you find inspiration, and what inspires you in art and also in life?
Ooh. Um, that's a good question. I think in people, in human beings, I think I'm lucky enough that I get to meet lots of really inspiring people, so I think ultimately, whether it's music or art or whatever it is, it's the people that are creating it, so yeah, human beings, if that's not too cheesy.
Not at all. No, it's authentic. It's real. Thanks for
Yeah.
answering that. I have 3 closing questions that I ask each of my guests, and the first one is a two-part question. Since the show is called Making It, what does making it mean to you both personally and professionally?
Making it to me personally means being at peace. Um, it means being happy with your work, being confident within yourself, um, and being able to sleep at night with a clear conscience. Um, I guess making it professionally to me, you know, I I'm gonna be really honest with you. I mean, I think it means success, achieving success with music. Um, of course, I mean, I don't believe that you need a Grammy or you need a Ivor Novello or you need a, whatever award to, confirm that you've created something amazing or that something's great. However, I do think that anyone who gets into this industry and is working with artists and commercial labels and says that they don't want those things or to achieve those things or, to be able to say, yeah, we freaking did it, we put in all this time and work and it was recognized. I think that, a lot of artists and we're all artists in a way, a lot of artists need that, and it's important to feel recognized and to get a clap on the back for stuff sometimes.
Especially recognition by your peers.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
Absolutely. And I think also touching people. I think when you see
Yeah.
that something that you've worked on has helped someone,
Yeah.
and it might be someone completely different that you just don't even know, a complete stranger. And I think that is, that's why art's so great,
I'm
and I
so
think
glad
that's
you
what
said that.
unites us all in it.
Yeah, I'm so happy to hear you say that. That's everything. When you know that something that you created, lands, that it moves somebody in a way that it touches them, it touches their heart, and helps them in some way or encourages them, it lifts them, it propels them into
Yeah.
some a sense of clarity or a purpose or just understanding. That's yeah, that's everything. It's really
Yeah.
nice to hear you say that, especially as a music industry executive. Yeah,
Yeah.
it makes me happy to hear you say that.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, it's great. Can you share 3 tips for success that have driven your career?
Okay, I'm trying to think in order. Okay, 3 tips to success. Always ask questions. It's so easy and it happens all the time and it's understandable, but it's so easy to kind of pretend you know something because you don't want to feel stupid or look stupid, but ultimately it always looks better and people appreciate you for asking the question. So always ask the question. Because a lot of the time people love to talk as well. So it's never a bad thing to ask questions. Um, 2, I think be consistent. Consistent in, we all have really tough days, we have tough weeks, sometimes we have a really tough year. Um, and you've got to stay consistent. I mean, I saw this great interview recently, I think it was with Seth Rogen, and he was saying, the only difference uh, between successful people and unsuccessful people that I meet is the one thing. Successful people didn't give up, you know?
Hmm.
So consistency. And third, look after your mental health. Um, I've seen so many people crash and burn. Um, and it can happen really easily. And I've almost done it myself countless times. I have to constantly check myself and, check in and, make sure that you're handling things correctly. And you are exposed to a lot of things and a lot of emotions and a lot of high intensity situations. So, making sure that how could I give someone advice as a manager if I can't look after myself? You can't pour from an empty cup. So yeah, looking after yourself is really
Hmm.
important.
I would imagine that you have 1 or 2 people in your life who you can count on for very clear feedback or bring you back to center
Yes,
course if you start to
yes, yeah,
overwork or
mm,
overstress or any of the above.
yeah. And that's what having a team is about. It's so important to have
Mhm.
a good team. So I before I chose to partner with ATC, I really took my time and kind of looked into a lot of different companies. And I think your team is everything. If you're an artist, your team is everything. But also if you're a manager, your team is everything.
Right.
And if you're an A&R, your team is everything. So yeah. And it makes it more fun. It's sometimes it's not all about the journey or the destination. It's about the company.
Ah,
So yeah.
yeah, well said. My closing question, and then I'll turn it over to you for any closing thoughts. But my last question is, at this point of your life with everything that you know to be true, what would you tell your younger self?
I would tell my younger self that everything is going to be fine. Everything is going to be fine. And relax and enjoy it a bit more. Stop sweating the small stuff and don't let people push you around.
Mm-hmm.
That was a few things. But yeah.
Those are great things. Would that be 18-year-old Emily or like 6-year-old Emily?
I think it would be Emily from birth, to be honest.
From birth, yes. Good, good.
But particularly post 18.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because it's a great industry, but it's also one that can,
It's brutal.
comes with its it's brutal. It comes with its side effects on your mental health. So I think I try and anyone that I'm mentoring or working with that's younger, I always try and kind of make sure they know that, because especially nowadays with social media, it's just really only getting worse. And so I think it's important just to be like, hey, we've all going on our own journey here, so don't stress too much about what other people are doing.
Mm-hmm. I appreciate you so much, and the transparency and honesty and compassion in which you are leading your life and helping guide other people, but also creating a great life for yourself as well, by having such a strong intention. And
Thank you.
yeah, I applaud you for that. I
Thank
had
you
a
very
feeling,
much.
from, well, I mean, even, our mutual friend who introduced us. Thank you, John, by the way.
Yeah, shout out to John.
Yeah. But, it was a good call to put us in touch with each other, because and it's very rare. I mean, I've had some wonderful conversations with some of your peers, like Ken Cragen, who was a wonderful manager and helped create We Are the World with Michael Jackson and Lionel Richie. And same thing, he just grew up with a very similar and lived his life in a very rich way in everything that you've been talking about, that we've been talking about this last hour. So you can be very successful and still not be mercenary or be a jerk or be completely selfish or defensive, or and we need more of that in the world.
Yeah.
Not just in our business.
Amen.
Any last things, closing thoughts, anything important to you that you'd like to share?
Just thank you so much for having me. It was really great to talk to you, and I think it's always good to have open discussions. So I appreciate you for being an advocate, and being a safe space and person to talk to. And thank you so much to everyone who tuned in to listen. I'm honored to be a guest. Thank you.
My absolute pleasure. Thank you to all of our listeners. We appreciate you joining us every week and following these master classes and having a great and successful life. And I encourage you all to stay safe and stay inspired. And Emily, thank you so much. It's lovely to have you on the show. I appreciate you.
Thank you so much.
Tune in again next week for another great episode of Making It with Terry Wollman.